Is Uber's rating system racially biased? Some drivers think so, and they are actually suing Uber in California because of it. What's up, guys? Brandon Sellers here from Gridwise, bringing you, as usual, all the latest news and data and insights and strategy in the gig driving world. Something really interesting kind of came down the wire yesterday, where we actually have a former Uber driver suing the company, claiming that their star rating system shows racial bias. He's actually an Asian American, and he claims, well, he got dropped down below a 4.6 and then got deactivated, of course, mostly, if not completely, because he was Asian. Now, I want to stop there and ask you drivers, the audience, anyone watching this video, what do you think here? Do you think that Uber has shown that the star rating system actually shows any bias? Have you experienced any bias, whether that be gender, whether that be based on race, whether that be the star rating system or just like on the platform in general? Would be really interested to hear kind of what everyone's thinking there. So yeah, that would be really interesting to hear. Again, in the comments below, let me know what you think. And then while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe, please, because that would help us out a lot and would allow us to continue to deliver you all these news and insights and data and things like that. But that's enough of me talking. You can hear me talking this whole video. That's enough of me asking you to do stuff. Let's dig in and kind of talk about exactly what happened. Again, an Uber driver has filed actually a class action lawsuit. I'm actually going to link the actual filing down below in the description here. Let me read this real quick. This class action case is brought by plaintiff Thomas Liu against defendant Uber Technologies, alleging that Uber has violated federal law by discriminating against minority drivers through its use of its star rating system, in which Uber passengers are asked to evaluate drivers on a 1 to 5 scale after each ride, and which is used by Uber to determine which drivers get terminated. Uber's use of this system to determine driver terminations constitutes race discrimination, as it is widely recognized that customer evaluations of workers are frequently racially biased. Indeed, Uber itself has recognized the racial bias of its own customers. Thus, use of this customer rating system to decide employment terminations constitutes both disparate impact discrimination as well as intentional discrimination against non-white drivers. I want to talk about this in kind of two different areas. One is just like, does this happen? Does racial bias in gig driving on the Uber platform, does that happen? I'm sure it does. But then also, that's great. What about from a court standpoint? How might it stand up there? We can do a little bit of I don't know what you call this, like Monday morning lawyering here. We can do a little bit of that. And then we can talk about what is generally always the case of, well, what can these companies do better, or can they do better, right? So when I think about this from a standpoint of, hey, does this happen? I'm sure it does. Just because, and I don't have any anecdotal evidence. I don't have any data, to show this. But I mean, when you look at the world, we live in an imperfect society, and the star rating system is just a complete reflection of society, right? It is simply, hey, you rate this person based on your experience. And I don't necessarily think that one race of people are worse drivers than others, but I'm sure that there are some people that think that way, whether it's right or wrong, and that's just like how society is. And so I'm sure this is something that actually does happen to drivers, and in some point of time. I do think that the star rating system, again, though, is just simply a reflection on society. So it would be kind of difficult to turn to really kind of society proof this system, right? So that's where I think you have a lot of difficulty. Is it's like, probably does happen, but what's there to be done there? And we could talk about that in a little bit after we kind of dig into well, okay, we can. I am sure there were some there. I don't know if this completely the reason this guy got deactivated, but there probably some instance, somewhere where someone has been racially discriminated because of this. But or on like the Uber platform, there's actually interesting, a study done by Stanford, I think commissioned by Uber a couple years ago, noted that the gender pay gap between male and female drivers was about 7%. This was a couple years ago, so I'm not sure what it is now, but it was about 7%. We actually might be able to do a study around that. That would actually be really cool. I don't actually want to do that. But a lot of the reason for that was where women took like different routes. They had to stay out of certain neighborhoods. They didn't drive as fast. Things like that happened, but essentially it was a lot. It had a lot to do. It certainly didn't have anything to do with like I'm paying you more because you're a male, and it had everything to do with kind of women being a little bit forced to actually take different actions, really a lot of the times in order to stay safe. And then there were some like family matters that came in the mind. So when you kind of take a look at that was more of just again just like a reflection of society, is not so much of the actual Uber platform, which I think might be the case here. But from a legal standpoint, do they have a case? Well, if you actually go back and kind of read some of the language they use terminated and they use employment. And the reason that they're actually filing this in California is certainly because, well, California is the state where you have a lot of the employment legislation coming down, and drivers in California should technically be employees at this point. We'll see if you're watching this on November 4th, 2020, that might not be the case anymore. We'll see. I'm going to actually do a video of Prop 22 predictions, or maybe I won't, I don't know. But we'll see what happens there. But they certainly are using that terminology. And I think that the only way they're going to actually be able to move on this, and possibly the reason that this guy actually got terminated in 2015. I think the only reason he's able to do this now, or is doing this now, is because it's 2020 and you can. I don't know. That's kind of a weird thing about this, and certainly that it's taking, this guy's from Hawaii, and he's doing the lawsuit in California. A little bit weird thing there, but certainly hinges on the employment status. And one thing, and they'll have to, if AB 5 or kind of gets not struck down, but if Prop 22 does pass, then it's going to be really hard for them to prove this case here, right? Because this certainly does hinge on the fact that, well, he thinks Uber drivers are employees. He actually, in like the statement of facts here, they actually say Uber is a San Francisco-based transportation service, and Uber will swear up and down that they are not a transportation service. And then they kind of go on to talk about, well, in social science research, that employers' reliance on customer evaluation systems may lead to discriminatory impact on racial minorities, which again, it does happen. It does happen. Like, it happens. Like, it's hard for me to say. It's hard for anyone to say. There's so many studies out there that say, okay, this happens in retail. It happens in any sort of service industry. I think, the fact that this hinges so much on Uber being an employer and not just kind of using these independent contractors, this whole case certainly is going to like revolve around that. And and even then, I was actually looking up before I shot this video, I was actually looking up a couple things in terms of other lawsuits around this, because it certainly happens a lot where you have lawsuits like this, and things that lawyers want to be able to prove are, well, was there a lack of objectivity when it comes to these discriminatory systems, right? yeah, is there a lack of objectivity? One kind of example was age. It says age discrimination can also come into play in other way. Or for example, in performance categories, that includes like gray areas, like does an employee have innovative ideas? If an older worker scores low, could it be viewed as age bias, right? And then so you can easily, if you have like a blanket question, hey, did you enjoy your ride or not? Well, you could certainly make the case for some bias there because you could, because there's just like a lot of like objectivity there. There's not a lot of objectivity there. There's a lot of subjectivity that could, seep into that score a little bit. Another thing was absence of a paper trail. Is there like a paper trail of overall like employee performance? Obviously with Uber, there is a long paper trail. You can kind of check in your app and see that. But then was there good communication around, being able to kind of help you from a performance review standpoint, helping you to be able to try to fix some of these things, right? If there's nothing at all, well, then that's not great communication there. So if we kind of take a step back there, if they are able to prove that Uber is an employer, let's say Prop 22 does not pass, and this Uber is an employer here, and that's how they actually litigate this, then you could have a claim here if you can kind of prove this lack of objectivity here. And that's where I think that Uber, no matter what happens, Uber could do a better job in terms of asking more specific questions around deactivations. And I think this is, I think Uber in general and Lyft, DoorDash, Instacart, everyone, I think they need to be a little bit more specific when they're asking consumers these questions, right? So again, like how was your ride? I don't know. Like who knows? You could not like Asian people, and then so you act, no, this wasn't great because I had to ride with an Asian guy, and they're not going to type that in their reasoning, and that's what Uber will say. Well, they didn't, they didn't actually say that. They said something, I don't know, a car smelled or something like that, and that's like the reason they put in the comment. So there's no racial bias there, but there could be, I think, like a better thing to do would be ask like more specific questions, like, was the speed appropriate for the ride? Did you get there safely? Did you ever feel like you were in danger? Was the car cleanliness okay? Things like that ask more specific questions so that, you can kind of avoid some of these areas. And then you can certainly have a system that could do a better job of rating you based on these things. Like when it comes down to it, it's like, how safe was it? How clean was the car? How comfortable was the car? How comfortable was the car? And then how friendly or not friendly? How pleasant was the driver? And if you can kind of take those, different areas and then actually start to rate the driver based off of that, and not this kind of broad, pretty, subjective, how was your ride? And so if I think coming out of this, I would hope that, again, all the gig companies would actually start to think about how they can make their rating systems a little bit more fair for drivers. A lot more fair for drivers. Because there's so many drivers out there that are getting deactivated for no reason. And these are people's livelihoods that can be stripped away from them for a lot of times passengers lying. A lot of times they don't really get good feedback and have a chance for any sort of performance review. And then so a lot of times it really just is not fair what's going on. And again, for you to be kind of taking away people's income streams because of this is not incredibly fair to me. I think there definitely needs to be another look at a lot of this stuff. So let me know what you guys think there. I think that there is no doubt that there's some racial discrimination. I think that, however, the star rating system is essentially a reflection of society. That doesn't let Uber and Lyft off the hook, though. I think that you should make your questioning about the reviews a little bit more subjective. a little bit more specific so that that reflection of society doesn't end up so egregious in some instances. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below about this case. Is there racial bias? What should Uber, Lyft, all the gig driving companies do to combat that? Let me know in the comments, and talk to you guys next time.